right, everybody. So, welcome and thank you for joining for us for the session of Mass Comm Week 2020. My name is Bianca Rodriguez. I'm a senior here at Texas State. I'm a public relations major, and I am one of the interns for Mass Comm Week this year. The sessions so far have been pretty great, and I hope that you've been able to catch a few other ones. This session today will be about developing brand strategy, and today we have Madison Scullin joining us from Favor Delivery, as she is a brand strategist. Madison, would you like to introduce tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. Yeah, hi, I'm Madison Scullin. I'm a brand and content strategist at Favor Delivery. I actually got my start in public relations. So originally I went to LSU for PR after switching from journalism and decided that I wanted to pursue a career in digital. So I started in traditional PR. So I was like pitching media, doing speaking and events, awards, databases, things like that. And then found my passion for social media. And so I started my company's first brand strategy department at Inc Communications, and then switched over to a larger advertising agency to do in-house marketing, and then found my way to the brand side. So originally when I started at Favor, I was just doing social and influencer marketing, and I've since expanded my role and created Favor's first brand strategy department as well. So I'm excited to share my experience with you and kind of how I got to where I am today and what my role looks like.
All right, that's awesome. So when we're not in the middle of a pandemic, what would your day typically look like?
Yeah, so usually get to the office around 8:30, get some coffee, some snacks. We have an amazing office, the East Side Tech Hub. We share that with HEB, and we moved into that last summer. So we only got about 6 months in that amazing space before we all started working from home. But yeah, so a lot of meetings. My biggest job, I would say, is kind of coordinating between teams. And so developing those high level brand strategies and positioning statements. So whether it's around charitable giving or partnerships or paid media, it's kind of developing Favor's internal storyline and then talking about how we'll distribute that across our channels. So I meet with our media and acquisition team to discuss paid media strategy. So what does the creative look like? What is the messaging we're sharing? I meet with our product and research teams to distill customer insights into actionable brand strategies. I meet with our experiential marketing team on partnerships. So partners like the Dallas Cowboys, the Dallas Fuel, Dr. Pepper, Shiner Brewing, really across the board. We work with CPG companies that are within our app, and then external brand partners like the Cowboys, where delivery as a service is convenient within the stadium and kind of getting our brand messaging out there. So I would say overall it's a lot of coordination and then kind of developing documents or presentation decks that recap actionable insights from our primary research. So like sitting in a focus group and saying, here's what we're noticing about customers' behaviors, and here's how we can shape that into an actionable strategy across our channels.
All right, that's definitely a lot that you take on, which is pretty great. So what do you think has been like your best, I guess, channel or source of advertising? Like which one do you think has like the most like return on investment?
I think for us, it's a combination of strong brand partnerships. So really leveraging our partners' channels to tell our story. Our existing audience on social and blog, they're pretty tuned in. They know what Favor is, but the real opportunity lies in customer education and awareness. And so partnering with, Dr. Pepper or Shiner, those types of brands to help tell our story in a co-branded way is a really powerful way to share our message. And then we recently started partnerships with brands like Michelob and Anheuser-Busch to kind of do media trades, because since HEB is a retailer and thus that kind of comes down to us, we can't accept money in exchange for services with alcohol brands. So it's been interesting to kind of revamp our partnership strategy to have like an in-kind like trade model where we're able to trade media impressions or engagements in order to kind of like work around these technical like logistics or problems.
how do y'all at Favor select and choose the partnerships that you do pursue?
So our big thing is Texas First. We're really proud to be a part of the HEB family, and our entire brand is based around serving Texans when they need it most. So we try to align with other brands that have a similar look. So like obviously the Cowboys, like I was saying, the Dallas Fuel, Shiner, Dr. Pepper, these are all like beloved Texas brands. And so we try to like lean into that messaging and really meet Texans where they are. So a good example of this is when COVID hit, we launched a campaign with HEB called Texans Helping Texans, and it was all about giving back to our communities when they needed us the most. And a part of that was like our senior support program. So we launched a senior support line where seniors could call and someone from our customer service team would answer and help them like manually place these grocery orders. And then we launched doorstep deliveries. So we were doing contactless delivery at the start of the pandemic and kind of like these types of program announcements. And it was important for us to find partners that are in Texas to help share that message. And so I was working directly with the Cowboys and the Dallas Fuel to help us create user-generated content with their players. So having them kind of do like customer education around what the senior support line is, kind of playing into Texans Helping Texans. So they were sending meals to one another and recording like selfie style videos to promote on their channels. And really just, I think that it's about empowering your partners to really believe in your message and to share that with their audience, because we want content that resonates with not only Favor's audience, but especially with our partners' audience. And so kind of creating like a cross collaboration and saying, okay, what do you guys need? What can we use our channel for specifically around delivery? And then from like a, digital perspective, how can we support what you guys have going on?
I love how intentional y'all are with your brand. I've been born and raised in Texas, so like Texas supporting Texas. I just like love to hear all that.
Yeah, thanks.
So how do y'all at Favor make yourselves stand out from other companies who offer similar services?
So once again, I'm just going to keep going back to that Texas angle because it really is our biggest differentiator. And then I think from a product standpoint, we really lean into anything delivered. So we were the first on-demand delivery service to achieve profitability, and also the first on-demand delivery service to offer anything delivered, including beer and wine. You can get a prescription from CVS. You can have a runner take your trash can from your garage or like from the edge of your garage to the road. It's the coolest part about Favor is that we act as a personal assistant. And so I think that it's a combination of emphasizing that anything delivered message and trying to weave it into these like seasonal moments. So like we just partnered with Kendra Scott to do same day delivery of jewelry. And we updated our app so you can view each piece of jewelry, which was new. We didn't have like the in-app imagery for each merchant. And so I think that that's another good example of like a Texas first brand. Like Kendra Scott is really proud to have started in Texas. And so I think for that, it's emphasizing our Texas roots, but also showing that through action. So we are extremely, community first is one of our core values. And we live and breathe that through everything that we do. So this summer around Black Lives Matter, we launched our We Stand Together initiative. And that was around supporting Black-owned restaurants across the state. And so we created a comprehensive support Black-owned restaurant guide that had literally any restaurant in Texas that was proudly like Black-owned. You could submit that through a form. We would add it to the list, whether they were a partnered merchant or not. And then we launched in-app giving for that. Similar for the senior support program. So we had in-app giving where after every favor you could donate $10 to $50 to cover seniors' tips, because that's what we were requiring them to pay our runner tip and then get your groceries. And so I think that it's beyond just these brand partnerships that speak to our Texas first value, but it's really supporting Texans and meeting them where they are. For like National Nurses Week this year, we did HEB Blooms delivery. You could nominate a nurse and send them free flowers. And so things like that to just really show our appreciation for our community and show up when they need us the most. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, sorry, just a little bit of technical things. Got it
Oh, it's
though.
okay.
um, so on your LinkedIn profile, it says that you've been given like a great deal of honors and awards. What do you think has been like the most fulfilling, or like the one that you say that you're the most proud of to date?
You know, I would say it's actually my student awards. I won a couple of Addies for photography, and really getting involved in the American Advertising Federation whenever I was in college. We didn't have a student chapter, but it helped feed me into Add to Austin, which has been probably like the biggest career building opportunity of my like early career. So I'm sure you guys know about the American Advertising Federation and Add to. That's probably how you guys heard about me. But yeah, the American Advertising Federation is just an incredible opportunity to showcase your work. The student competition, I think they have it like submissions open around this time every year, and then it'll be in February. And I highly recommend that all of you guys submit creative work and samples to that. It's definitely less competitive when you're a student, and those accolades can take you a long way whenever you're applying for jobs and trying to differentiate yourself, and really showing like your creative prowess. Oh, it says that you guys don't have a student AAF chapter. Oh, right. You guys have Ad Club. So yeah, to kind of describe that structure, there's Ad Club at the collegiate level, and then Add to Austin for kind of that in between, which is 32 and under, and then you feed into AdFed. And so I joined Add to Austin whenever I moved to Austin about 5 years ago. I was on the communications team, managing social and email comms, and then switched over to the vice president role, and then acted as president last year, or I guess 2019. So yeah, I would say that beyond awards, it's really about the work that you're highlighting in those submissions, and how you can bring that to life through your portfolio, add it on LinkedIn, et cetera, just to show that you're creating work that is impactful to your company and impactful in the industry as well.
So you said that those are just generally like creative works. Is there like something specific that that like students typically submit, or can it be like anything that kind of falls within like the umbrella?
They have a ton of categories. I know they have print, they have photography. I think that you can submit some of your student campaign work like in those senior campaign classes. I've never been on the back end of the submissions to know exactly what students can submit versus what businesses or brands submit. But yeah, I remember that the process was pretty simple, and you can show, I think that there's a combination of like strategy, creative, out of home examples. Like, I think that you can kind of find your proudest work and fit that, like kind of back that into a category. And I know that each school should have someone who's in charge of the Addies. It's probably through Ad Club. I would assume Craig for sure knows about it. And so if you want to reach out and get more details, I would highly suggest y'all looking into that around this time this year, especially because we've had such a crazy year. Really any way to kind of like set yourself apart from the pack ahead of graduation, would definitely recommend that.
Also on your LinkedIn profile, it says that you're head of strategy at Austin Design Week. Could you give us like a short summary of like what that entails?
Sure. Yeah. So Austin Design Week is actually this week. So I hope that you guys have had a chance to look at the schedule and sign up for some events. It's a free week of design focused events, and that ranges across all disciplines. So yesterday there was a DIY animation workshop. Yesterday there was a session on embracing unlearning language. So terms we were talking about, toxic terms like powwow and grandfathered in and master bedroom, and kind of where those phrases originated, and how to be more conscious of your language and how that could affect someone else. Even like an interesting example that they brought up was companies that refer to themselves as families, and the pressure that puts on people to perform in a way that is only expected from a family and not at a company. Then there are sessions on product design, experiential design, They were talking about COVID hospitals and how the design of hospitals has changed due to COVID. And so things like that. And so anyway, as the head of strategy, I've been responsible for our communication strategy. So it's mainly editorial calendar management and then people management within the team. So we led a brand voice workshop like prior to Austin Design Weeks kicking off. And then from there, we kind of talked about like, what are our pillars? What are some content series that we can create? So we launched designer spotlights where we're featuring designers across Austin and in different disciplines. We share quote graphics from the sessions. And really it's just about like creating a pipeline of content to promote the event. So like from the awareness stage, which is, like we want people to know what ADW is, to the engagement stage, to the conversion stage. So we want them to actually convert into an attendee. And so it's been another great experience. This was my first board since Add to Austin. It's been really awesome to just kind of get hands-on, meet these designers, kind of tell their stories through our channels, and then also promote individual events and try to convert that into registrations. So yeah, it's kind of like my day job, but in volunteer form, which I've really enjoyed.
Sorry, I'm dealing with multiple screens here.
Oh, that's okay.
So what did your transition from college to work life look?
So it was interesting because I was in PR and then quickly realized I was like, I don't think media relations is my thing. Luckily, I worked at a very flexible agency that was rapidly expanding. So when I joined, there were 13 employees, and when I left, there were 40. And so that's a recommendation that I have for you guys is like consider the size of the company that you're applying for. Typically, if you are working at a smaller place, you are going to be wearing way more hats. And at a bigger agency or company, you're going to be in a more niche role. And what I really appreciated about starting at a small agency is that my experience was so broad. I was working across 6 to 7 clients at a time across industries, primarily in tech, and then started getting interested in like consumer packaged goods, especially with breweries and Whole Foods Market 365. That was, I think, my favorite client. So in the retail space. And so initially, it's like whenever you're a student, you're putting in a ton of hours, but you don't really feel the same return. You're like, okay, I'm just trying to get this degree. I'm trying to get this paper. You have the stress of the job search, but it's amazing when you find that first job and you finally get to like sink in deep into something you're really interested in. Especially if you have like a boss, manager, a company that believes in you and wants to leverage your talents in different ways. So, I was hired for this very specific PR coordinator role that was like building these media lists, building speaking and events databases, applying for awards for the company, things like that. But my role really grew as I grew in my career. So, I took on one social media project and that grew the account, and they were like, we actually want to do social media full time, like not just project based. So they were like, okay, Madison would be a good person to have as a coordinator on this account. And by the time I left 3 years later, I was the manager on the account. And so I think it's awesome to kind of test out different skills, like whether that's copywriting, design, just try to get your feet wet in as many areas as you can, because you don't know what's going to stick. Like I never thought that partnership strategy would be something that I was interested in. But at Favor, I'm 5 years into my career and I've realized like this is something sustainable and something that I might want to dive deeper into in a future role, because it's a kind of a combination of brand strategy, content strategy, and working with external partners, which I really liked from my time at agencies. And so, yeah, in terms of the transition, I would say that the first year on the job was the toughest for me. I experienced a ton of growing pains. It was really like just a difference in schedule and flow. Like at LSU, I was like bouncing around on my bike. I had classes, I had internships. I could go home for lunch, played hooky a couple of times. And then it's like whenever you're full-time at a job, like the pressure is on and, you have limited vacation days. It's just, sometimes not as flexible as your school schedule. But in my opinion, it's way more empowering. You're earning real money that you can, grow savings for yourself. I have slowly upgraded my apartments. I bought a house this summer. Like, it's just, yeah, it's a crazy transition. But know that like that first year on the job is probably going to be your hardest. It'll be like the boot camp of your career. But once you get past those initial growing pains, it's amazing. It's smooth sailing. You realize your strengths, and you can just apply those to new opportunities.
So you're talking about like growing pains. Like, were there any like specific like challenges that you weren't expecting, or do you want to
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that?
So because I was working at a small agency and I had such a heavy client roster, it was really about like that always on approach. And my company was very flexible with work from home. So we could work from home 2 days a week. We could work from wherever, really. It didn't even have to be in Austin. And I felt like I really struggled with work-life balance, with time management, especially when there's a client emailing you at 8 p.m. It's like when you're in client service, you're kind of expected to respond within a couple of hours. And of course, that wasn't the standard that my company set at night. But like kind of, it would keep me up at night. I'd get an email late and I'd be like, well, how am I not supposed to think about this? Whenever this client is paying us and expecting us to kind of like monitor their business at all times. And so I think for me, it was really just about avoiding burnout. And, I had never sat in a chair for 45, 50 hours a week to do work. I was always like on my bike, going to classes. Like, it was just fresh every day. You have a different schedule Tuesday, Thursday than you do Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You'd be like, oh, nice. I don't start till 10 on Fridays, which gives me time to work out or whatever. And so it's kind of like losing that flexibility that was stressful for me personally. And I think that's just part of my personality type. And then also just not knowing how to manage or communicate bandwidth constraints, because especially, your first year or two on the job, you're trying to prove yourself. You want to make a name for yourself. You want to show that you're willing to go the extra mile for the company. And I do think that while that's an important mindset to have, you also need to take care of yourself and kind of know your limits, because especially when you're in a creative or strategic role, managing burnout is going to be huge in terms of your production quality. So definitely, I think my piece of advice there is communicate with your manager, let them know what your kind of like limits and boundaries are. For me, like being on the Add to Austin board, I would have to say like, okay, on Wednesdays from whatever time, I'm out of pocket and I'll be working like dedicated to Add to during this time. And so just kind of like over communicating what your constraints are, and then really just like understanding your personal boundaries there too. So if you need to turn your phone or laptop off at 7 p.m. every night just to make sure that you get the sleep you need to produce the next day, then make sure that's known and kind of set that for yourself early.
That's definitely good advice, especially with everything that's going on right now. Like, managing your time is so important.
Right.
So what advice do you have for students who are looking for an internship or job hunting right now?
So my biggest advice is to connect with people before you need them. So the way that I got my internship and then full-time job at Inc. was because I reached out for an informational interview. And so I reached out to, I think, like 40 companies and sent emails and LinkedIn messages to anyone who looked like whose role looked like one that I wanted to pursue. And so that was creative directors, digital strategists, social media managers. And I set up a week, or I guess it was like 3 or 4 days, where I was going to be in Austin. I had some friends come with me. And so I set up as many interviews as I could. And it was just 15 to 30-minute conversations about their role, what they liked about the company, what types of clients they worked on, how they bridged that gap from college to internship to full-time job. And really just giving like their personal anecdotes and recommendations on that process. And so that turned into, I want to say like 11 interviews, A couple of them got canceled last minute, but it built an amazing pipeline for me a year before I graduated. And so it was a lot lower pressure because these places didn't even have internships open for the summer yet. But it was like, hey, here's who I am. Here's what I've been working on. I brought an iPad with my mini portfolio of like social media samples, and it wasn't anything super fancy, but I was able to kind of present myself, learn more about them, and then nurture that relationship for the next 6 months until I landed my internship. And so I think that that is actually a lot easier in a COVID world because people have time and they're willing to hop on a Zoom call before they would be willing to go and get coffee. And, like that ends up a 15-minute coffee meeting ends up being an hour in terms of the commute and kind of the extended conversation, et cetera. So my big advice now is to build those connections now, whether you're joining a board, which is also a lot easier now when there's not, worries about parking or like getting to a meeting on time. So join volunteer organizations, build connections through LinkedIn, find those people who are in the roles that you want to pursue and just learn more about their experience. Like, how did they get there? What does their day-to-day responsibilities look like? What do they like? What do they not like? And kind of build that dream role for yourself. And then really just kind of stay on top of it. So how can you create a schedule for yourself over the next year? I guess like set personal goals and a career mission statement of what you want this job to look like, and kind of back it up into how can I tactically achieve this? So whether that's saying I want to meet with 5 people a month and talk about their jobs, and then building a follow-up schedule for yourself. Like, I want to follow up with these people once a quarter, whether that's sending an article that you found was interesting, giving them kudos that you saw something on LinkedIn, and really just staying top of mind. Because at the end of the day, like, your network really is your net worth. And you're going to find that people are your best connections to getting an interview. I've definitely found that the easiest way to get an interview is to know someone at the company, to have some sort of connection. And so the more you can build your network now before you are like in a crunch and, like, I need a job in the next 2 months, the easier it'll be to secure that opportunity.
Would you say, or what is a single skill that you think students need to learn like before graduating?
If I'm trying to think of something that's like interdisciplinary, I would say time management is huge. Because that, if you can get all of your ducks in a row and yourself and how in the way you work, it's going to make project management a lot easier. And so I think that the overarching umbrella of that is time management, and then under that it's project management, setting boundaries, understanding your limits, knowing the best way that you work and the best types of people that you work with. And then really you can identify that in an interview. You can start asking more behavioral questions about the structure of the team and reporting, and how kind of like how they function within that role, to see if that would be a good fit. Because your manager is going to be a huge influence on your career, especially in the beginning in those like associate, like coordinator roles. And so really like understanding the way you work and what works best and how you can grow within that to fit different types of teams and brands will be like a big learning curve. Because I think at the beginning, like I was saying, I was just killing myself, like running all the time and just trying to get everything under the sun done. And I realized that I'm more efficient and produce higher quality work when I take a project, like a time management, project management mindset to everything that I do. So I'm like, how can I most efficiently achieve these goals? And, whether it's setting up Asana for yourself or Trello, I've definitely found that tools like that help. And then Google Calendar, reminders and invites. I set reminders to stop working sometimes. If I know I have like a social commitment, things like that, once you learn more of those soft skills, it'll really help like across roles and across teams.
Yeah, I know it took me a good minute to figure out like my like kind of way that I function, kind of like what you were saying. So I hope the listeners heard that, because it's definitely really good advice. Um, All right, so for this next part, we're going to open up the floor for Q&A. So listeners, if you'd like to ask a question, use the little participation options to raise your hand, and then I'll call on you. And then whenever I call on you, just go ahead and turn on your camera and your mic and then ask your question. Or if you'd like one of us to ask it for you, you can just go ahead and use the chat, and then we can kind of help sort that out. So anyone who wants to ask a question, go for it.
I have one, if I can kind of get us started, if that's okay. So I am a giant Dallas Cowboys fan, Madison. In fact, my coffee cup this morning, Dallas Cowboys. So I'm curious what participation with that partnership program looks like with the Cowboys, and kind of like what their structure looks like because they're such a big organization. Are you working with an in-house marketing team, or is that one of the agencies for the Cowboys? Like, how is all of that kind of logistics working?
Yeah, so I actually worked directly with the Cowboys. I think that her title is marketing manager or marketing partnerships manager. They do have like a pretty large infrastructure. So there's been like people that come in and out of the fold. Last year I was a little less hands-on. I was more of figuring out how we could run ticket like giveaways, jersey giveaways, things like that. Like how could we leverage their social and our social? But this year it's been pretty crazy because with COVID, like most of our sponsorship deliverables for last year were in stadium signage. We had booths where we were activating people with like photo booths and stuff. They had a pace car with like the Dallas Cowboys logo and Favors logo. And now that we've kind of abandoned this like experiential marketing partnership due to COVID, we're leaning into digital deliverables. And so my role has become pretty heavily partnerships focused this year with brands like the Cowboys, the Fuel, things like that, because we've had to completely shift. So now our latest partnership deliverable is going to be the Star at Night. Have you heard of that like web show that they have? Yeah, and so we'll be working directly with their hosts to create social content, and we created like unique deep links that will take people to our app and apply delivery credits. We can kind of like track the results of that. But the Cowboys is an interesting one. Like I am interested to see where we take this. We kind of just started dipping our toe into these new deliverables. But yeah, formerly it was a lot of like in person. You know, we want signage and branding in the stadium, and this year it's kind of shifted to how can you share our campaign messaging on your channels. Like we did something similar with Texans Helping Texans, and say like we had a couple of players and cheerleaders do like these selfie style videos saying like what Texans Helping Texans means to them, and so we shared that on our channels. And now we're more so plugging into these like web shows to say like how can we weave favor in? So like we're going to have swag in the background of their Zoom show. We're going to have them deliver food in the middle of the show. They're going to do like player recap segments. So where players come in and give the recap, and that'll be sponsored by Favor. And so kind of just, it's more about now creating content that's engaging for their audience that we can share instead of having them kind of create that like user generated content for us.
Very cool. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. Y'all don't be shy. I can answer questions about companies that you're interested in, steps of the interview process, social media, content creation, really whatever y'all are interested in.
Hi, Madison. So I have a question.
Yeah.
So I currently work for Central Market, and I was wondering how that transition would be if I was to like look into like an interview with Favor or anything in that sense, or if there's anything available that you know of.
Yeah, I do think that brand tie-in would probably be helpful in terms of you like making a connection at the company. What are you interested in pursuing? Like what is your are you
advertising? Correct.
Okay. So I don't think that we have any roles, like any coordinator roles open on our media team. But we did just go through like a round of promotions, and there's people that are moving around. So I wouldn't be surprised in the next year or so if we do have a role open there, because our media team is like a huge lever that we can pull through our paid advertising. My recommendation would just be like to keep up with our LinkedIn careers page, and yeah, just like hitting apply. You can send me an email whenever you apply, and I can let our recruiters know. But yeah, I think that, I mean, it's always helpful to have some sort of relation to the brand or some familiarity. And we do promote Central Market quite often through HEB. So yeah, I definitely say that couldn't hurt to have that experience.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. One question we do have is, what skill would you recommend learning that maybe isn't accessible at school? Or like something, yeah, just outside of school and college resources.
Kind of going back to that project management. So I don't personally have this, but there's like a JIRA certification that you can get that I've heard is like hugely helpful, or any sort of like Scrum, like there's this like Scrum certification, and it's about like project and team management. And I think that that is super helpful across disciplines, just to be able to lead a meeting, to know the right format for a document that people are going to be collaborating in, project timelines. Like that's going to be a huge soft skill that you have across roles. So any types of, and just in general, really any certifications that you can get that speak to your experience outside of your coursework will definitely help set you apart. And also a lot of those courses will help you on your resume, hitting that, that they have these applicant tracking systems that pull out keywords from your resume. And so a lot of those like HubSpot, digital marketing, SEO, like to have that in your resume will kind of bump it up in the stack. So really any sort of like professional development, coursework, certifications that you can get within the industry that you're trying to apply to will definitely help set you apart.
All right, another question that we got is, so I'm trying to read it. I guess, what advice do you have for good interview questions? Like whenever someone is going in for an interview, at the very end, whenever they ask the applicant if they have any questions for like the company, like do you have any suggestions for that?
Yeah. So I actually wrote a Medium series whenever I was between jobs last summer. You can find me on Medium, just Madison Scullin. And in the interviewing piece, I did list about like 15 different types of questions. I think that there's like contextual questions around the role and team, so like what is the reporting structure like? Has this role is this a backfilled role, or is this the first time that someone's entering this role? If it is backfilled, why did the last person leave? Like definitely don't be afraid to ask some of those more contextual questions for the role. And then I think there's like behavioral questions, like how does this team best work together? Like what are some pain points? I think that honestly, like focusing on some of those potential concerns you have is huge. You don't want to just be like, oh, I'll work anywhere. This is all about this is the perfect role for me every time. I think it's like, hey, so like I noticed you guys have like I don't know how to say this, not a really bad Glassdoor, but like I noticed some concerning reviews on Glassdoor around X, Y, or Z for this team. That was actually the case at my last job, is that there were a couple of scathing reviews for the team that I was on specifically. And so we talked through those, and they had to just kind of achieve a new level of transparency within the interview, which I appreciated. And then beyond that, I would say like, why are you passionate about this job? Where do you see yourself in a few years on this team? What has your growth trajectory looked like? And is there anything you would do differently? And then kind of asking about like the company's plans. So like if it's a startup, what is your primary goal? Like, is it acquisition? Are you trying to IPO? And kind of just like painting the picture of the future for not only your hiring manager, but the company, and then how you could grow in that role as well. But yeah, I would definitely check out the blog post. I listed them a little bit more clearly.
All right. So there's this one question. Oh, sorry. It jumped in. Okay. So Patricia is working with a botanical company, and so she says that they have me helping pretty much with all social media stuff as well as designing new products. And she was wondering what she can put on her resume instead of just saying intern at company.
Hmm. I think it is important to clarify that it's an internship so you don't get ahead of yourself on if they try to bump you up because they think it's a full-time role and that you're overexperienced for the coordinator role or something like that. So some indication that you're an intern. But I think you could say like social media management intern or social media and product management, like really trying to hit those keywords. And generally like trying to mirror job descriptions that you resonate with. So I still do this all the time. Like LinkedIn will promote a job for a marketing manager or brand content strategist, and it'll be way out of my level. It'll be in California. I don't really favor, but I still copy and paste that job description in this Google Doc that I have just as kind of like a goal for myself. Like, oh wow, this job requires 10 years experience, but this is exactly what I want to be doing in the next 3 to 5 years. And so kind of mirroring the language and keywords that are in those job descriptions from a lot of different places, not just like one job description that you're applying for. But what I'd recommend for Patricia is to kind of like find that that role at a different company and then kind of build the job description and title off of that.
All right. What do you look for in a LinkedIn profile?
Yeah, so I personally, for me, I think it's about being like well-rounded. And so having a bio, I don't think that it has to be a long bio, like your experience will speak for itself. If you have a portfolio, definitely including a link to that or any writing that you have. And then clear job description. So people should be able to read your description and know what you do for that company. I think the biggest mistake that I see is when people just list the role, like the title and company, and you have no idea. Like if they say marketing coordinator, I'm like, that can mean so many things. Like, are you working in social? Are you doing CRM? Are you just kind of like doing that administrative work for the marketing team? Like definitely list what you're doing and how that applies to your strengths. So for each of my roles, I have a short description of what the role is, and then bullet points of what either what I'm doing or if it's a past role, what I achieved there. So anytime you can highlight results, that's big. Anytime you can like put an award, an honor, if you're in organizations, put what your role is there and kind of what that looks like. I recommend for students, if you do have a board role, put it as a job in your LinkedIn instead of just at the bottom under volunteer experience, because I feel like that gets kind of buried and you have to expand it to even see what the description of that role was. But like, for example, for Austin Design Week, that's a big role for me. It's been, a 6-month commitment. And so I put that as a job to highlight it. And then also, I think that something that's important and often overlooked is your title on LinkedIn. So, instead of saying student, say young professional seeking opportunities in digital marketing, or something that clearly brands you beyond your current internship or role.
All right, and then we have one more question from a student. Mallory is also on the team for planning Mass Comm Week, and she said that she was born and raised in New Orleans, and she was wondering what your experience at LSU was like.
Oh yeah, I loved LSU. I went because I had a full scholarship, so it wasn't really like a question for me. I was like, yeah, I would love to go to school for free. But the Mass Comm program was amazing. I had some awesome professors that I still stay in touch with today. It was a massive campus. Like obviously football is huge. So like tailgating and all of those cultural events was super fun. Yeah, I was born and raised in Baton Rouge and I have some family in New Orleans. So it was just kind of like going down the street for me. It wasn't like a crazy Southern college experience like after moving from the Northeast or anything. But yeah, I really liked LSU and would definitely recommend it for the Mass Comm program.
All right, and let's see. All right, are there any more? Oh, sorry, just kidding. As like a, do you have any words of wisdom or like encouraging messages for students?
Yeah, I think a big piece of advice that might be a little controversial at the beginning of your career, but it's know your worth and know your boundaries. And I know I've kind of emphasized that at a couple of points. But truly, like I think that there's a lot of pressure at the start of your career to just work yourself to the bone and be perfect and just like sell your soul to this company or brand. And I think it's important to kind of um, go back to your roots and say, here's why I'm doing this. I love this industry. I love this role. And just know when it's no longer serving you. So, for me, I stayed at my first company for 3 years. We had a very diplomatic parting. I was like, I think I just want to move to a bigger company, a bigger agency, and see what that's like. And so, and then, I left that company after less than a year because it just wasn't a good fit for me. And that was a huge lesson learned because I'd always heard like stay at a job for a year at the very least, try to stay for 3 to 5 years. And while I do think that's important, especially when setting a foundation, it's also important to just be treated fairly and to know your worth and know your limits. So I know it sounds crazy, like you don't want to leave your first job. Like, of course, like you want to stay there for a long time, but if things start to go south, definitely treat yourself right, because if you're doing the work and you have the right skill set for another job, like you'll find something else. So just don't get trapped in something.
All right. Well, thank you so much for giving us a little bit of your time to out of your busy day to come talk to our students. And thank you, audience, for tuning in today for this session for Mass Comm Week. Go ahead and, sorry, don't be afraid to check out our website for other sessions that we have for later on this week. And yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, feel free to add me on LinkedIn. Love to chat.
Perfect.